Welcome to the deep dive. Let's be real for a second. When you think tabletop wargaming, what pops into your head?
Yeah, probably like huge tables, tons of tiny figures, maybe rule books thick enough to stop a door.
Exactly. It can seem pretty intimidating, like trying to scale a mountain without any gear.
And that's kind of the myth we want to bust today. We've been digging into the rules and the unit creation stuff for Mecha Bardagulan.
Right.
And our mission, basically, is to show you how jumping into this whole wargaming scene, especially with this game, can actually be pretty smooth.
Yeah.
And, fun, even if you've never touched a miniature before, except maybe stepping on one.
Yeah, totally. And what grabbed me right away about Mecha Bardagulan is how it deals with maybe the biggest hurdle, the miniatures themselves. The creator, Sir Michael Paloyo, he says it really clearly. I strongly believe that we should be able to battle using the models we have.
Yeah, let's breathe new life into our collections. That's the idea.
Exactly. So you think about that shelf of cool robot models you've got, or maybe some fantasy figures.
Suddenly they're not just sitting there. They've got a job to do.
That's such a key point. That whole bring what you already own idea, it just changes everything about getting started.
Right.
Because let's face it, buying specific models, painting them, that can be a huge barrier. Cost, time, effort.
Definitely.
So by saying, hey, just use what you've got, it lowers the pressure instantly, lets you be creative right off the bat.
Yeah.
And you can really see the designer's goal there, making tabletop wargaming accessible and fun. Kind of like, grabbing a board game and just playing.
It really feels like that was baked in from the start. Paloyo wanted rules so he could use his own stuff, like his gunpla models,
Right.
for battles that were, I think he said, simple but fun.
Yeah, and it seems like people who've played it agree. Lots of positive comments about how easy unit creation is, how the rules just click. It's like this deliberate effort to, open the door for newcomers, making Mecha Bardagulan that first step into this honestly pretty awesome hobby. Yeah, without feeling totally overwhelmed.
Exactly. It's more about, hanging out with friends, making cool stories happen on a table, not getting lost in super complex rules.
Okay, so you've got your random cool figures ready. How does a game actually play out? What makes it feel less like studying for a test and more like fun?
Well, the basic round structure is really straightforward, actually.
Okay.
Each round kicks off with an initiative roll. Simple D6. Then each of your units gets 1 command point CP.
1 CP per unit. Got it.
Yep. And then players just take turns activating 1 unit at a time.
Yeah.
And when you activate, you can move or attack or, do both.
Ah, okay. Now that's interesting. It's not like you have to move, then you have to shoot.
Exactly. None of that rigid structure. You've got real flexibility there. You could say, move up a little, fire off a shot, then maybe duck back behind something.
Oh, nice.
Or shoot first, then use your move to get into a better spot for next turn. Once everyone's activated a unit, the round ends.
Yeah.
And here's a neat bit. Any CP you didn't spend, it carries over to the next round.
Oh, okay. So you can save up for a bigger turn later. That adds a nice bit of strategy without being complicated right away.
Precisely. It lets you ease into thinking tactically.
So, movement. You mentioned the units get CP. How easy is it to actually, move your giant robot or whatever it is across the table?
Yeah, movement's clearly defined.
Yeah.
Depends on the unit type. Heavies move 4 inches, normals go 6, and fast ones zip around at 8 inches.
Standard measuring tape stuff.
Yep, measure from the front or back of the model's base, or the model itself if no base. And changing direction, pivoting, super simple, costs 1 inch of your move initially.
Okay.
But once you've actually moved any distance, you can pivot freely as much as you want at the end.
Ah, so no complex facing rules to get bogged down in. That sounds like it keeps things moving.
Definitely helps the flow.
What if you end up right next to an enemy, stuck in melee?
Getting out of close combat is surprisingly easy. You just need to roll a 4 or more on a d6. It doesn't even cost CP.
Wow, okay.
If you fail the roll, you can still move and pivot, but you gotta stay close to them, kind of in their face. But yeah, it avoids that feeling of being locked down forever.
That sounds way less punishing than some other war games I've heard about. Okay, so we're moving, we're positioning. How do we actually do stuff like shoot?
The core mechanic for almost everything is just a basic skill check.
Okay.
You roll 1d6, you need to meet or beat a target number. Simple as that.
Right.
A natural 1 always fails, that's kind of standard. But a natural 6 is a critical success, usually gives you some kind of bonus.
Simple, effective, love it. So my heavily armed action figure wants to shoot something. Walk me through it.
Okay, first,
check the weapon. It'll have a CP cost. You pay that cost.
Right, using the CP my unit got at the start of the round, or maybe
Yeah.
saved up.
Then pick a target you can see that's within the weapon's range.
Yeah.
Then you look at the weapon's attacks value. It's usually shown as A followed by a number.
Okay,
The number tells you how many dice you roll to try and hit. More attacks, more dice.
makes sense. Now the poor guy getting shot at, do they just stand there?
No, they get to react. The player controlling the target chooses one of two things. They can guard, which lets them roll a d3 and reduce the damage.
Okay, reduce damage.
Or they can evade. That makes them harder to hit. Adds 1 to the attacker's target number.
And crucially,
These reactions cost 0 CP. They're free defensive moves.
free defense. Okay, that keeps things interactive, even when it's not your turn. Any little tricks to attacking, like positioning bonuses?
Oh yeah, normally you attack what's in front of you, but there's a back attack rule. If you can get behind an enemy unit, clear line of sight to their rear.
Sneaky?
Yep. You get a bonus. It's easier to hit them by 1, and they can't use their guard or evade reaction.
Ooh, okay, rewards flanking. Nice.
Also, a successful hit always does at least 1 damage, even if math somehow makes it 0 otherwise. Prevents those feel-bad moments.
Good rule.
And one more thing, if your weapon has multiple attacks, like A3, you can actually split those shots between different targets if you want, as long as they're all in range and sight.
Oh, interesting. So you could potentially ping a couple of different enemies.
Exactly. Add some nice tactical choices, even with simple weapons.
So even for beginners, there are these little ways to play smart. Okay, let's circle back to using any models. How does the game handle stats for, a Gundam versus a Space Marine versus a Dragon?
Right, that's where the unit creation system comes in, and it's designed to be really straightforward.
Okay.
You start with 3 basic unit classes: heavy, normal, and fast. Each one comes with set movement and save values like their base toughness.
Heavy, normal, fast. Easy enough.
Then you pick a pilot expertise. Again, 3 simple options: gunner, balanced, or fighter. This mainly tweaks their skill at shooting versus fighting up close.
So basically pick a body type and a skill focus. That sounds very manageable.
It really is. Then on top of that chassis and pilot, you get to add up to 4 weapons or pieces of equipment or upgrades.
Just 4 slots.
Yep, keeps it focused. Stops you getting lost in endless options, especially when you're starting out. And there's one small limit. You can't take more than 2 of the exact same melee weapon or a ranged weapon. Encourages a bit of variety.
Right, stops people just loading up on 4 identical mega cannons or something.
Pretty much. But here's another helpful bit. Even if you don't fill those slots, or you want to save CP, every unit always has a basic melee attack and a basic ranged attack available. And these basic attacks cost 0 CP and don't use up any of your 4 loadout slots.
That's a great safety net. Means everyone can always use something in a fight.
Exactly. It ensures no unit is ever just sitting there uselessly.
It really sounds like you can get a custom unit ready pretty quickly without needing like a degree in game design.
That's absolutely the goal.
So beyond the rules, the dice rolling, the unit building, what's the overall feel of the game? Is it super competitive and crunchy, or is there space for just having a laugh and telling a story?
The designer is really upfront about this. The aim is for battles that are simple but fun and create stories that we'll remember. To help with that, the game includes a couple of basic scenarios right out of the box. There's domination, where you're fighting over objectives on the map.
Okay, control points. Yeah.
And annihilation, which is more straightforward, just try and wipe out the other guy's forces. They give you a good starting structure.
But you're not like stuck with only those 2 ways to play.
Oh, absolutely not. The whole system is built to be flexible. You're actually encouraged to modify rules if something doesn't quite work for your group, or get creative with making terrain, or even design your own scenarios completely from scratch.
I like that.
It really supports that use your collection, tell your stories vibe, and it even mentions solo play is possible. Great for practicing or just having some fun by yourself.
Okay, so it provides a solid foundation, but also says, hey, go wild, make it your own. That fits perfectly with using whatever figures you have. Right, so for someone listening who's maybe never played any tabletop game before, what do they absolutely need to start Mecha Bardagulan, besides digging out those old toys?
Honestly, the list is really short. You need some regular 6-sided dice D6s, probably a few of them.
Okay, standard dice.
You need a measuring tool, like a tape measure or a ruler marked in inches.
Inches, got it.
And some terrain. And really, terrain can be anything when you're starting. Books, boxes, maybe some empty cans, coffee mugs,
anything to block line of sight and make the battlefield interesting.
So you don't need to immediately buy, like, fancy resin hills or anything?
Not at all. Use what's around the house. The rules suggest table sizes like 3 by 3 feet or 4 by 4, but again, you can adapt to whatever space you have.
That's super reassuring. And keeping track of unit stats. Is it a complicated character sheet?
Nope. Very streamlined. Each unit just has a few core stats. Movement, shooting skill, fighting skill, their save value, and health points. That's pretty much it.
Nice and clean.
And weapons are similar. Clear stats for CP cost, type like ranged or melee, range, attacks, the A value we talked about, armor piercing, and damage. Everything's designed to be easy to read and find quickly during a game.
Okay, it genuinely sounds like Mecha Bardagulan was built from the ground up with accessibility in mind. So let's kind of pull it all together. For that person who's maybe always been curious about wargaming but felt, put off by the complexity or cost, why is this such a good starting point, even if they're totally new to tabletop games in general?
I think it boils down to like 5 main things. 1, the rules are genuinely simple, not a steep learning curve, which is huge for any new gamer.
Right.
2, using your existing models, that just removes that huge initial barrier, cost, time, pressure.
Yeah, the collection aspect.
3, the gameplay itself is fast and engaging. It doesn't drag on, keeps you involved, good for holding attention if you're maybe unsure about longer games.
Keeps things snappy.
4,
Yeah.
simple core mechanics. Rolling d6s, target numbers, it feels familiar.
Yeah.
And the unit creation is flexible, but not paralyzingly complex.
Right, customizable but manageable.
And 5, maybe the most important, the focus is on fun and telling stories. It's less about min-maxing stats and more about having a good time, seeing cool stuff happen on the table.
So the big message is, you really don't need to be a veteran strategist or have a perfectly painted specific army to get into tabletop battles.
Not with this, no.
Mecha Bardagulan seems like a fantastic low-stress way to just jump in, bring your imagination, grab whatever cool figures you've got, and make them fight without that overwhelming feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Which kind of leads to our final thought for you listening out there. Just imagine it. You've probably got some awesome figures, robots, monsters, whatever, just gathering dust. What kind of crazy battles could you create? What would be the first unit you'd throw onto the table in a game of Mecha Bardagulan?
Ooh, yeah. What stories are waiting on your shelf right now?
Yeah.
It's a really fun invitation, isn't it? No pressure, just possibility.
Totally.
Well, definitely gives you something to think about. If this sounds interesting and you want to find out more, maybe connect with other players, check out the Mecha Bardagulan community. We'll make sure the links to their Facebook group, Discord, YouTube channel are wherever you found this deep dive.
Yeah, definitely check them out.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.